Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, I'm going to talk through some of the ongoings on the transfer front, as well as Ruben Amorim's position, as we are into, of course, yet another boring international break after a good win against Sunderland, which will certainly calm certain aspects, but obviously has people thinking with a little bit of nervousness and the knowledge that things are not going to change on the manager front. Well, we better get good pretty quickly. We are also, of course, getting closer and closer to another transfer window. We're still far away, of course, but it is October and United are planning and thinking about the January window, which could be active. So I want to discuss a few things there, including Joshua Zirkzee, Kobbie Mainoo, and the midfield. So let's get right into the action. Starting with, of course, Ruben Amorim in his position. This is the first thing that I want to talk about today. Obviously, Ruben Amorim, there was a lot of talk ahead of the game against Sunderland, a lot of different stories out there, different things out there, and all of that. And you know, there was some stories, as you got from The Athletic and Laurie Whitwell and David Ornstein, that Ruben Amorim's position was fairly safe, that Sir Jim would prefer to give him the full season, that it wasn't one loss to Sunderland and suddenly he was going to be gone. And then you had stories on the other side from Telegraph elsewhere that he was under extreme pressure for this game, and this could be a make or break a game for his situation at the club. Now, the truth, well, as far as I understand, it was closer to what the Athletic were saying, but I would suggest that an additional loss would have at least got the wheels turning a little bit. The information that I had and presented in the weeks leading up to this was that, one, yes, they believe from the last international break when we were discussing this that there is progress on the pitch, and that they are seeing things kind of improve. And, you know, this has been taken different ways. Some people see that as true. Some people see that as not true. I get it. I'm not one to, you know, insist too much on this. People have their own views on football, and obviously at the end of the day, winning matches is the most important thing. And any sort of progress in terms of statistics has to, of course, align with winning football matches. But the feeling was that there was progress in terms of the stats, in terms of the way United are playing, in terms of the way United are moving forward. And from a purely factual standpoint, that is true. United are statistically better than they've been over the last two seasons. And in fact, in terms of the actual results, after the win against Sunderland, this is the best start points-wise in the last three seasons as well. So United are technically making progress. Now, is the team and the club up to the level of where it should be? Of course not. Of course not. But the feeling and the discussion around whether Ruben Amorim should stay from within the club and from the executive team in charge is really more fundamentally based on, are we seeing progress? Is there a progression that is happening? Can it continue to grow linearly up towards where we need to be by the end of this season? And that goal, of course, was getting back into Europe. United are 1 point off of Europa League, 1 point off of Conference League, 2 points off, I think, Champions League, technically, or maybe it's 3 at this point, but not very far off either way. So in that respect, based on their own standard measurement, he is on track for what they want. That doesn't mean everything is okay. In the last week or so, following the Brentford game especially, it was my information that there were some pretty intense kind of meetings and discussions that had gone on, naturally, because it was a really bad loss and because United were in danger of being in a situation that was not good to start the season. 7 points after 7 games, should they not have beat Sunderland, would have been worse than the prior season, where Ten Hag essentially got sacked in the game following this international break. So yeah, there was some discussion over this, and the view of the club, as far as I understand it, of Wilcox, of the management team, of the people involved, again, coming from my information and where I sit, was basically that, you know, one, they wanted to assist and figure out first and foremost what can they do to help Ruben Amorim get better results, because they believe that there's some progress in terms of the way we're playing, but how is that translating into points, wins, and some of the games we've seen where things have just gone awry. One of those things was personnel and the selection of personnel. One of those changes that was definitely discussed as it being the right time to do it was to bring Senna Lammens in, and that was successful. So clearly, I would say that had a good impact on things. But there were other factors as well. And this is where, for myself, I have a lot of hope that we can turn things around, and it's not from the perspective of backing Ruben Amorim or something like that. It's more from the perspective of this is the first time that we've had a support system in place the way that we do now for a manager, where Wilcox has, they have analysts, data people, he's got his own people he speaks with, all of that, to look at what's going on, what's going wrong, can they work together with the manager to improve and resolve the situation and make it better and get it to an improved situation. Can they solve some of the problems that they're doing? Can they turn around a slide? Can they turn around a negative situation? We brought in all these data people and all that to build this out. Well, this is what they're there for, is actually to help and assist and do this, because most clubs have this where they can look and say, hey, look, the data, the analysis is telling us this. Maybe we make some changes here and it's going to improve better. Maybe we need to spend more time preparing for this during the week. Maybe we need to do that. Well, they've been utilizing that and putting it to the task and seeing some improvement on the basis of that, especially in this last week before Sunderland, and hopefully that will continue into the future. But that has been priority number one, is to try and see if they can look at the situation, change some of the approaches, change some of the things that they're doing, and get more consistency in the results. So the win at Sunderland will help with that, but obviously, moving forward, the consistency will be a vital and fundamental piece to this whole puzzle. But that was part of what was going on in the last week, as in terms of priority one, try and turn things around. At the same time, was there a look-in at, if we do have to make a change, should we start looking at what potentially we could do, who potentially might be the right choice? Yes and no. As I've said before, United have not made up any kind of list in terms of managers or anything like that. They haven't. They have data and information on most managers, and they have it sitting somewhere. They've got those files. They've got that information. They've got that. They're looking at it. And so there's always going to be people involved who have different opinions, different views. That information exists there, but they haven't been putting together short lists of, hey, let's hire this person if he leaves, and we're going to start talking to these people. That doesn't exist. That hasn't happened, and it's probably not going to happen for a while now. That being said, again, there was and has been discussion over, all right, well, if things don't turn around, do we need to make a change? And some thought process has gone into that. But given the present situation, given the last week, given the feeling that there is progress, that Ruben Amorim is willing to work well with Wilcox and the people involved to adjust things, despite the insistence that he's not going to change his system. Again, that's not what they think is the problem either. There are other aspects that they feel that they can tweak and change within the system, within the principles that he's laying out, personnel, approach, training, things like that, that will result in more consistency. So just the fact, as of right now, Ruben Amorim's position is pretty secure. Obviously, you go and get blown away at Anfield, it's always going to call a manager's position into question, and it should. United should be going into that game well. I think things will be reviewed again at the next international break, and that's not to say Ruben Amorim is on some sort of game-by-game sort of situation, but so long as we're not falling way off track from the goal of getting back into Europe, then his position is likely to remain the same. One of the mitigating factors that we'll get to in a minute is in the midfield. It's my understanding, certainly, that has been provided as a mitigating factor to Ruben Amorim, given that it's been a problem this year and given that it was a position he wanted, and they made sort of the decision to not necessarily buy first or second or even third or fourth, but looked at towards the end and weren't able to get a deal over the line there. And it continues to be an area of some struggle, amusingly and ironically, specifically when it's not Casemiro playing. So it is what it is there. But yeah, that's the truth about the Amorim situation. not particularly in any danger. I know it's not what a lot of people out there want to hear, although I'm not convinced as many people actually want him out as is being represented by some of the bigger accounts on social media. It just happens to be a lot of big accounts on social media, and people are always entitled to their opinions and all of that. But the reality is they want him to stick it out, and they would like to at least go this season and see if we can achieve the goals that are laid out, and they do see progress in that regard. So I don't want to keep discussing it every single day. Honestly, it gets kind of boring because the truth is, barring big losses and United getting off track from Europe, he's likely to stay. I ran a poll the other day about this to find out, what was the view in terms of where United should be finishing this season. Now, I get sort of a bit of a feeling that too many people voted for Champions League qualification that probably wouldn't have said so before the season. But regardless, basically 60%, if you add up the bottom three options, would consider Europa League a success. Well, United are pretty much essentially on track within 1 point of that Europa League qualification. So on that basis, there really shouldn't be much clamor for the manager to leave at this point in time from the majority of people, I suppose. But regardless of what anybody thinks, regardless of what anybody wants, the reality is going into this international break, his position is pretty secure right now. Next is Onana. There was a story already that has come out from a journalist at The Sun, but it is a very, very good journalist for these stories and certain players that he has very good links to, that states that Trabzonspor are already looking to make permanent the move for Onana, and would like to bring him in permanently next season. Even though they don't have an option built into the contract, they are pretty certain they want to do that. So that's good. That's a good sign. We need that to happen. We need, it would be nice and easy if that deal gets done. Onana is obviously done at United, sort of as we know. Some of the things that went on in summer, as we've talked about before, very unimpressive to United. Senna Lammens was brought in to be the number one. I've said it a million times, and I say it again. Senna Lammens was brought in to be the number one when he was purchased. He started. He'll probably keep that position now. We know Onana is very likely done at United. There could be another keeper brought in, but it would essentially be more of a veteran type of presence rather than somebody being brought in to supersede Lammens or anything like that. And Onana, his position at United is essentially finished at this point in time. So he is likely to leave, and Trabzonspor are already interested in keeping him on a permanent. So it seems like we won't have to deal with that. United don't need to see a lot from him. I think they purchased him for 45 million. It's been 3 seasons, I want to say. Is this 4 seasons that he's been here now? Has it really been that long? Let's see. Erik ten Hag's 2nd season, his 3rd season. And now this is... No, it hasn't. And this is Amorim's 1st full season. So it'll be 3 seasons. So United will owe 18 million next summer left on his deal. If they can bring in 12 to 15, then I think that'll be enough, and they'll clear him off. And the wages shouldn't be an issue in Turkey as well. So obviously extremely likely he goes, but it looks like hopefully this one gets done well ahead of summer, is agreed, is ready. Even a purchase in January, something like that would be very, very good. All right, so moving on to the midfield. Couple of things happening here on the midfield front that I want to discuss. First and foremost, United are, as we know, they move forward with the signing of Christian Orozco from South America, who will be joining next year as a young player. And they've done something else here as well, which is an interesting strategy that we've seen. Fabrizio says United are also working on the signing of 17-year-old Mohamed Dabo after being satisfied with his trial. This is this young player. He looks really, really good. Several things still need to be finalized before the deal can be completed. And what I'm talking about here, this thing of loading up on young midfield talent at the same time as the club will make at least one major midfield signing. They did this with strikers last year. Clear strategy is at play. And this seems to be an approach that they're taking right now when they're looking at positions. They're saying, look, we may not have a ton of players in the midfield that we feel in the academy and elsewhere that we feel can step up. We know at striker that this was a bit of an issue. That at striker, they didn't have a lot of talent. So what did they do? They got Kanabiak, they got Cheeto, and they brought in, obviously, Benjamin Šeško. So you've got potentially a runway for some players to come from the academy into the first team. Now it's the same in the midfield. Now, it's going to spark a little bit of debate because in the midfield, we've got players that people really like, guys like Jim Thwaites, guys like Fletcher, and both Fletchers technically, and others as well in there. But the fact of the matter is we have to consider how many people, whether they actually think they're going to make it, whether they actually think they're going to be ready, whether they're actually going to think they're going to come through. And then you also have to factor in the fact that, midfield is multiple positions, and it would be very good, not every academy of talent, even the ones you think might be able to make a step up in the first team, do make it. A lot of the best talents in the academy that United are looking at right now are forwards and wide players. JJ Gabriel, Shea Lacey, Ibrahimov, Mantato. There's a lot of good young players there in the wider areas. In the middle, I would say there's less certainty of the players being able to take that kind of step ups. Jim Thwaites is a really, really top talent. Very small, a bit undersized. Hopefully he grows and things, but I'm not saying that's the only factor in it. But certainly adding more midfield talent is very good. But especially here, we're also talking about a different type of player. We're not talking about signing 15-year-olds from the rest of England. We're talking about players who are, when they're joining 18 years old, on the verge of that first team level, and so can maybe more immediately make an impact into adding depth into the first team. And when we go into the future seasons, obviously what they want to do is not have a bunch of overpriced older players sitting on the books. And they want to be able to clean house and keep that wage bill at a controllable level so that they can keep investing. So it's a clear strategy on what they want to do here in terms of bringing these in. Orozco, Dabo, these are really exciting young prospects, actually. And so hopefully between them, between Kone and all these guys, we get one or two of them to actually break into the first team in the next 12, 24 months when things are a little more settled. And we stop having these issues of constantly needing to buy everyone. It would be really good if we could use the youth for the academy ranks and be buying, for the first team, the regular starters ready to go. Now, that of course leads to the second half of that equation, which is that we really do want to bring in midfielders. And I can again confirm that we'll be looking at the midfielders in January, and there's a strong consideration there. If we're going to buy someone in January, it's very likely to be one of the players we really want. And there are some questions on this. It's certainly been evaluated and established, and from what I've looked at, it's the same as well, that Casemiro is a fundamentally important part of the midfield. And so the primary importance is getting somebody who can do sort of that sitting six type of role. And they're looking at different players, but truthfully, there could be two midfielders brought in between January and next summer. The futures of Bruno Fernandes, Casemiro, and even Kobbie Mainoo are in question at this point, and Ugarte as well. If he doesn't have a good season, he'll be at the end of that two-season rule, and they certainly would be open to selling him at that point. Hasn't had a great start to the season. There's still time left, but there's a decent chance he could be sold as well, and there's interest in him from clubs in Italy and elsewhere also that want to utilize the skill set that he has, which may not fit United and United's midfield at present, but might fit in other places. So the full midfield rebuild could be there. Obviously, we'll get to Mainoo, but there could be a lot that changes here over the next 12 months, 24 months. I mean, regardless, it's probable that United need two midfielders because it's very likely that a couple of midfielders are going to depart. And if they're back in Europe and have multiple competition, we certainly aren't going to get away with having just 2 or 3 and 1 youth player or something like that. Even if there's youth ready to step up, we need 5, 6 options, 4 senior players and a couple of youth options as well. So they've been looking obviously at Carlos Baleba, we know, being the main target. There is some concern over his start to the season. Now, I'm not using this graph to just purely show stats or everything and all of that. But I want to highlight a couple of important things when it comes to the role that Casemiro plays in the team. If we look at in yellow, what they really like out of Casemiro is high duel percentage and possessions won. He can sit, shield the defense, and he can hit the long ball. They don't want that number 6 getting way too high up. Amorim and the team has found that essentially that's part of the reason they're getting exposed defensively. When he's not playing the skill sets, the strengths of other players in there, like Ugarte, like Mainoo, etc., they're not really sitting. Ugarte wants to go rush around and tackle. Mainoo wants to go bring the ball up the pitch. Casemiro will sit, win duels, shield the back line, and hit those, the balls into the channels, the switches, the out balls to the wing backs and things like that as well. So they're certainly valued stats. Now, Baleba still fits that role quite well. He's still a very good duel winner. He has had a tough start to the season. He hasn't been great. His passing hasn't been great. But certainly, I wouldn't say that makes him not a target. He still is. But I don't think they're going to be wanting, there is some consideration over that form. Does it change by January? But also in terms of cost, you can't be paying $110 million for a player that is not yet consistent like that when United need it. And especially when you look at the pressure that can be had at United and taking that step up. So there is some consideration there, I can tell you, in terms of, is it still the right guy? And if so, maybe that initial price, 60 million, 65 million, is the right price. And if Brighton won't accept that, then it's not worth it. 2 of the other big names under consideration, and I think United really do want to get some Prem-proven players in here, are Elliot Anderson and Adam Wharton. Now, from people I speak with kind of going back and forth, I think most people view Elliot Anderson here in the purple as a bit more of an 8. And I would tend to agree by watching him and by the numbers as well, that he wants to get up, get forward a bit more. He wants to move it around. Then there's Adam Wharton. Adam Wharton, I think, has had a really bright start to the season. He's probably the most similar player to Casemiro that there is. And he's playing in a similar system as well. Shields the back line for Glasner. Obviously, they play a bit more defensively, a bit more than on the counterattack. So he gets forward, smashes the ball up. That's leading directly to shots and things like that. But still, regardless, Adam Wharton probably, if we wanted to get a Casemiro, the closest possible thing right now is Adam Wharton. We've been watching him for years. We've talked about him so many times. A problem that United are going to have at this point is that there's going to be competition. Rodri looks to be struggling at City. Madrid have interest in Adam Wharton. It's going to be a competition. Liverpool are going to want a midfielder. We've talked about this before. So January could provide an opportunity, but there still might be a lot of competition for these players. So we'll see where we go. The decision's obviously not been made. There's others they're looking at. We've talked about Buwadi. We've talked about Yeomand. We've talked about Ederson. We've talked about Yarmouk at Brentford. So let's see what they do. I do believe that they're wanting the more sitting 6 as a priority at the moment. More like the Shield, that deeper player that the game can pivot off of as more of a priority at the moment, because they just don't feel they have a similar profile to Casemiro at the club right now. So this is still something being looked at. Baleba still feels as though it's somebody that they could go for, that they feel can do that role, that has really high potential. But, they'll want to see his form improve a little bit, but also the price has to be right as well. Then we talk about Joshua Zirkzee. Obviously, this is a situation where, United are, it's a situation where United are, without the extra games from Europe and all that. Obviously, it's putting United in a bit of a bind, let's say, right? A bit of a bind here where there's not enough games to go around. And we kind of knew this would happen a little bit. And Joshua Zirkzee got injured at the wrong time. It's a World Cup year. It's kind of a worst possible situation for a few players. Zirkzee and Mainoo, technically, both in here, where they obviously want to play. Zirkzee wants to play. Zirkzee wants to get into the Dutch national team. He's not getting a lot of opportunities right now, a lot fewer than Mainoo, mind you. He doesn't traditionally fit what we want from a number 9. There's not that much game time in terms of rotation to give him there. We've got Cunha, we've got Mount, we've got Mbeumo. You know, we've got Kobbie that all can play in that front. We've got Šeško, obviously. 1 game a week. We're searching for consistency. We're probably not going to be subbing and changing those players too much. The minutes are limited. And the truth is that Joshua Zirkzee is looking to potentially move away, and that United could end up in the market for a veteran striker in January. I shared this in the Patreon a few days ago. Before, you know, we get to outside of the windows, I try to take it slow. I don't like to introduce drama or things like that, so I plan to talk about it during the international break. But I said this on October 1st. We might be discussing a veteran striker for January, and this Zirkzee leaving in January for Welbeck. That's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, so don't take that too seriously. And funding a new midfielder. Watch this space. And that was on October 4th. So we got stories yesterday that Joshua Zirkzee is looking to leave. Stories from the Dutch side, stories from the English side, that he's unhappy with the situation, looking to leave. This is true. This is a known situation, and United may be in the market for a striker in January. Now, could it be Danny Welbeck? Yes, it could. Obviously, United have been interested in following. They do want a bit more of a traditional number 9 in there as well, so that, you know, one of the things that United have struggled with, and that I know has been a part of the analysis of where things can go wrong, is every time we sub a player, and this is because the squad has not been built. This is because the squad has not been built. One of the things we see is that, you know, you get these claims, you get these statements like, well, we miss a few players, and then the whole thing goes to crap. And the thing is, it's been like that for years. It's been like that actually for every single manager at United, because we know that over the years, the club has never built the squad with any kind of consistency. You get all this mishmash of profiles. So even when you start to get a better starting 11 that kind of fits together, one change and you have a totally different player. You change Šeško for Zirkzee, you have a totally different dynamic. You lose a huge amount of box presence. You sub Ahmad off at right wing back. You have nobody to play out there, you know? And that's one of the challenges at striker, you know, in there with that, is keeping that same dynamic. So it's true that Joshua Zirkzee wants to leave, or is considering his options, and some of it's noise over the national team and the World Cup, of course, understandably, and that's that. So it may happen. May be that he leaves. There's a few months to go. One injury can change things, and suddenly you're playing up every game, and the whole situation changes. So we'll see what happens there. Still time before there's a decision made on this, but certainly it is one to keep an eye on, and that United could end up looking to a midfielder in a veteran striker as well in the January window. And then in terms of Mainoo, a semi-similar situation. Of course, we've all known this. This has been talked about plenty, that Kobbie Mainoo has concerns over his position at United. He has gotten more chances. He has played in 6 straight games, but obviously as a substitute, looking unlikely like he's going to be getting into that starting role anytime soon. You know, the only thing I would continue to suggest on this is that, again, the long term, I want to state this with at least some certainty as to where it was leading into summer and going into this year, and starting from January when the story started and most of them were untrue. The club would like to keep Kobbie Mainoo. The club would like Kobbie Mainoo to stay. The club would like Kobbie Mainoo to agree a new contract. The club would like Kobbie Mainoo to be patient, and that the opportunities will come, and that in the long term he can be someone who takes over from Bruno Fernandes. It is a two-way street. They would like to see some commitment from him. There was a period at the start of the year, not season, start of the year, January, December, where he was playing starting every game. Factually, 10 out of 11 games after Amorim arrived in the league, he was starting. They agreed during that period a new contract with Ahmad. They made offers and meetings with Mainoo that did not result in a contract agreement. Ahmad is playing, Mainoo is not. There might be something in that. I can only speculate. I want to have conversations over this break to see if I can nail down a bit more of a balanced perspective on this Mainoo thing and where it's really at. Because, it's obviously it's really concerning people. It's a really easy thing to turn and bash the manager on. I get that. Personally, I want to see Kobbie Mainoo play more football. Also, personally, I don't like the way that it's gone about in the media. I think a lot of it's been crap. I think a lot of it has been representative of some of the things that are wrong at United. But personally, I would like to see Kobbie Mainoo get more chances, more opportunities, and play. So I think you can be in the middle and feel both things are true. But I'd like to find a bit more details over this break, over this situation from the club side and all sides as well. So hopefully I can bring more on that, and hopefully there's a positive outcome to all of this in the end. Again, one injury, one this, one that can change everything. I thought it was interesting that Ruben Amorim gave him a substitution against Sunderland in the 10 this time, which I believe, maybe trying to find more places where he can get Kobbie on the pitch. Again, I would like to see that. I think Kobbie can play multiple roles, especially across the pitch. So hopefully we see more and more of that and get him going at the same time. But I'll see if I can find out any more on this. Obviously, again, the World Cup year, all of that. It's a few months to January. If the situation doesn't change, if minutes remain very limited for Kobbie, then yeah, obviously we enter January, he's going to look again to potentially leave. But I want to find out, just more on updated situation on all of this from the last, because the last was they want him to stay, they want him to be here, there's a plan for him in the long term. Has the way things have gone changed all of that? I don't know. So I'd like to find out a bit more. But I don't feel great about his agents. I'm not pinning that on him. I really don't feel great about his agents. Like I said, I think he should be playing more. I'd like to see him play more, but I also think that the way it's been handled makes it harder for the club, makes it harder for Amorim to pick him. And I don't think it's doing him any favors. So anyway, that's what I've got for today's video. That's a bit of a summary of the current state of affairs. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.